The day I moved into my new home, the HOA called the cops on me, and I wasn't even part of their neighborhood. That's how it all started, with flashing blue lights, a clipboard-wielding Karen named Aubrey King, and me standing in my own driveway holding a box labeled kitchen stuff. I'd spent 30 years designing county roads and bridges, yet somehow this woman thought she owned the one I drove in on. When the officer told her the truth that my property was outside the HOA's jurisdiction, her face froze like concrete setting in the Sunday. But I saw it in her eyes this wasn't over. She wanted control. I wanted peace. And somewhere between those two, a war was about to erupt, a war over 10 feet of asphalt and a boundary line the HOA wished didn't exist. Before we dive into this story, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there, and of course hit subscribe so you don't miss what happens when I decide to take back what's mine. When I first pulled my old F-150 into the gravel driveway of my new home in Pine Ridge Valley, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace, the kind that sinks into your bones. The land sat at the very edge of the Maple Grove Estates subdivision, right past the white wooden HOA sign that read, "A private community, residents only." My little 2-acre parcel wasn't part of their map. According to county records, it had never been annexed. That was the point. I'd spent most of my career as a civil engineer working for the State Department of Transportation, helping small towns fix boundary disputes and right-of-way problems. After 30 years of bureaucratic nonsense, I wanted solitude, trees a creek, and no one telling me what color to paint my mailbox. The house itself wasn't much a one-story cabin-style home with cedar siding and a slanted green roof that reminded me of my father's place in Montana. But it was mine. I unloaded boxes one by one, humming to the rhythm of birds and the occasional distant mower. By noon, I was covered in dust, sweat, and satisfaction. That's when the black SUV rolled up. The vehicle stopped just beyond the mailbox. The driver's window slid down, revealing a woman wearing oversized sunglasses, a crisp pink blazer, and an expression that could curdle milk. She didn't smile. "Excuse me," she said, voice sharp and deliberate. "Are you the new owner here?" I wiped my hands on my jeans. "Yes, ma'am. Jeffrey Mitchell. I'm Aubrey King, president of the Maple Grove HOA." She said it like she was announcing royalty. "I didn't see your approval request come through." Approval for what I asked. For exterior colors, architectural compliance, landscaping modifications, you name it. Her tone implied I'd already broken 10 laws. I gave her a polite smile. "You must be mistaken. My property's outside your HOA boundaries." Her lips pressed together. "That's impossible. Everything on this road falls under Maple Grove Estates." I walked over to the fence post, tapped the small orange marker the county survey crew had placed there the week before. "This marker says otherwise. County land starts here, HOA land stops there." Her nostrils flared. "We'll see about that." She sped off so fast, dust swallowed her SUV. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't even lunchtime when the flashing blue lights appeared. 2 deputies stepped out of a patrol car, hands resting casually on their belts. "Afternoon, sir," one of them said. "We got a call about unauthorized construction and possible zoning violations." I almost laughed. "Let me guess, Aubrey King." They exchanged glances. The taller one shrugged. "We don't name callers, sir." "Mind if we take a look around?" "Not at all," I said, leading them across the front yard. I showed them my deed, my county permit for minor renovations, and the property map I'd printed from the assessor's office. They looked over everything, nodded, and by the time we reached the truck, both were shaking their heads. "Looks like you're good, Mr. Mitchell," the deputy said. "That HOA doesn't have jurisdiction past the ridge." I smiled. "Yeah, I tried telling her that." He grinned. "You'd be surprised how often we get calls from that lady. You'd think she runs her own government." They drove off, leaving a faint smell of hot brakes and dust behind them. I thought maybe now Aubrey would leave me alone. Maybe she'd accept defeat gracefully. I underestimated her. That evening, as the sun sank low over the pines, I noticed something glinting at the end of the road, a metal sign freshly bolted to a post. In bold white letters, "Private Road, HOA access only, trespassers will be fined." I stared at it for a long time, the absurdity sinking in. This was a public access road. I'd confirmed it before buying the property. The HOA had no right to restrict it. Still, the message was clear: you don't belong here. The next morning a letter arrived, hand-delivered, no postage. The envelope was printed with the Maple Grove HOA logo, complete with gold-embossed lettering. Notice of non-compliance. It has come to our attention that your property presents visible, non-conforming elements inconsistent with the aesthetic standards of Maple Grove Estates. Please submit exterior color samples and landscaping plans for approval within 10 business days. Failure to comply may result in enforcement action. At the bottom, Aubrey's signature looped dramatic and underlined twice. I laughed out loud. Enforcement action. On land they didn't own. This was going to be fun. That afternoon, I drove into the county seat, straight to the registrar's office. The clerk, a man with kind eyes and a coffee mug labeled GIS equals God, in shoes pulled up the land records. Yep, he said after a few clicks. Your property's parcel 214 amperes. That entire stretch of road you use, county maintained since 1982. HOA tried to annex it once in '09, but the petition was denied. No legal claim whatsoever. Any way I can get that in writing, he chuckled. Already printing it. I left with a certified copy of the boundary map and a mischievous grin. By the end of the week, Aubrey's campaign of pettiness had escalated. One morning I woke to the sound of a drone buzzing low over my roof. I stepped onto the porch, coffee in hand, and stared it down until it retreated. Later that day, I found a notice taped to my mailbox claiming unapproved structural modifications to my porch. I hadn't built a thing. They were making it up as they went. The real kicker came when my friend Marcus, another retired engineer who lived down the valley, stopped by and pointed out something odd. You realize they're mowing halfway onto your land. Sure enough, along the edge of the road, the HOA's landscaping crew had cut a neat strip right through the wildflower patch I'd planted, leaving tire ruts in the soil. They were literally trimming my property like it belonged to them. That's when I decided it was time to hit back, not with anger, but with paperwork. I documented everything: photos, timestamps, GPS coordinates. I even set up a trail camera aimed at the entrance where their trucks rolled through. Then I filed a formal complaint with the County Infrastructure Division, citing unauthorized occupation of a public right-of-way by a private association. Bureaucratic language, sure, but in government, words like that were dynamite. A week later, I got a call from a county inspector named Pauline Harris. She sounded amused. "Mr. Mitchell, I received your report. It's detailed. Mind if I come out to take a look?" "Be my guest," I said. She showed up 2 days later in a white county vehicle, clipboard in hand. We walked the entire stretch of road together. She took measurements, snapped photos, and asked questions about the HOA's activities. When we reached the private road sign, she frowned. "They installed this themselves yesterday morning," I said. She sighed. "Then they're in violation of County Code 7.12. No private entity can post signage implying ownership of a public easement." "What happens now?" I asked. "Oh, they'll get a letter, and if they ignore it, they'll get a fine." She grinned. "Let's just say this won't make your HOA president happy." I chuckled. "I'm counting on it." That night, I sat on my porch watching headlights sweep across the distant hills. Somewhere beyond the ridge, I imagined Aubrey pacing her immaculate living room, furious that her authority hadn't extended beyond her picket fences. For her, control was oxygen. For me, peace was rebellion. But I also knew people like her didn't stop. They escalated. And when they did, they usually picked the wrong target. Because what Aubrey didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that I'd spent decades teaching counties how to reclaim mismanaged roads, how to undo illegal annexations, and how to make bureaucracies eat their own paperwork. This wasn't just about a driveway or a sign anymore. This was about principle. And as far as I was concerned, the battle line had already been drawn right at the edge of that bright white private road sign she thought could scare me. By morning, that sign would still be standing. But soon enough, so would the truth. The next morning, I woke to the rhythmic thud of machinery. It wasn't the soft hum of a lawnmower, it was heavier, mechanical, deliberate. I stepped outside and saw a convoy of maintenance trucks parked along the road that led to my property. 2 men in neon vests were spraying weed killer. Another was driving a small street sweeper that threw up a cloud of dust as it moved. Each vehicle bore the same emblem, Maple Grove Estates, HOA. They weren't trimming grass anymore, they were claiming territory. The irony was almost comical. I stood on my porch sipping coffee, watching these hired soldiers manicure what they thought was their road. One worker even waved at me politely, probably unaware of the brewing storm between his employer and the outsider he was working in front of. I waved back with a smirk. Let them dig their own hole. When they left, I walked down to inspect the damage. The edge of the asphalt had been overcut by a few inches. The ditches freshly lined with gravel, and a small "Maintenance by Maple Grove HOA" placard hammered into the dirt near the curve. I crouched to examine it, the words "unauthorized signage" already forming in my head like a legal note. By noon, I had the county assessor's digital map pulled up on my laptop, tracing the exact boundary between the HOA's platted lots and my parcel. It was like looking at two different worlds, the HOA's neatly gridded rectangle of uniform homes and my wild patch of unincorporated land separated by a single road labeled County Road 214 amperes. The coordinates were crystal clear. The road, the ditches, the easement, all county property. Still, Aubrey was determined to rewrite reality. That evening, a thick envelope appeared in my mailbox. No stamp again. The HOA must have had a courier service, just for their intimidation campaigns. Inside was a formal letter on expensive linen paper. Notice of access restriction. Effective immediately, residents outside Maple Grove Estates are prohibited from using HOA-maintained roads for personal or commercial purposes. Continued use may result in trespassing citations and civil penalties as determined by the HOA board. Below the printed text was a handwritten note in flowing cursive. You've been warned, Mr. Mitchell. Please stay within your property boundaries. A.K. A chill ran through me, not fear, but something colder, the realization that Aubrey King believed her HOA was a government. I decided to return the favor with my own paperwork. The next day, I drove to the Ridgefield County Transportation Office, where an old colleague of mine, David Turner, worked as a senior planner. He used to be my intern 20 years ago. When I walked into his cubicle, he grinned like he'd seen a ghost. "Jeff, you finally retired for real, huh?" Trying to, I said. Until an HOA declared war on my driveway. He laughed, then stopped when he saw the seriousness in my eyes. I explained everything, the signs, the letters, the fake maintenance work. David listened, nodding slowly, and then swiveled his monitor toward me. "You're not going to believe this," he said. "They've been filing maintenance claims for that road for years." Claims, as in reimbursement. He clicked a few keys and pulled up scanned PDFs of invoices, each stamped Maple Grove HOA billed to the county's community grant program. Thousands of dollars over multiple fiscal years for ditch repair, culvert cleaning, and erosion control. "They've been getting paid to maintain a road that isn't theirs," I muttered. David nodded grimly. "Yeah, and it looks like no one cross-checked parcel ownership. You'd be surprised how many small HOAs pull this crap. But this one's bold. Can you give me copies of those records?" He hesitated. "Officially, I shouldn't." Unofficially, he printed everything into a neat folder and slid it across the desk. "You didn't get these from me." By the time I drove home, I had everything I needed: the county boundary map maintenance, invoices, and photographs showing their trucks trespassing. I wasn't just defending my property anymore, I was about to expose a fraud. But Aubrey wasn't sitting idle. That evening, while reviewing the documents on my porch, headlights swept across my yard again. Her black SUV pulled up window, rolling down with a mechanical hiss. "Evening, Mr. Mitchell," she said coolly. "You've been busy." I met her gaze calm and steady. "So have you, apparently. Billing the county for road work outside your jurisdiction, that's creative." Her eyes narrowed, but her voice didn't waver. "You think you can threaten me with paperwork? My husband's on the county zoning committee. Then he should know better than to falsify maintenance claims," I replied. "You might want to check your HOA insurance because when the county audit hits, you'll need it." Her expression flickered for the first time. "You wouldn't dare." "Oh, I would," I said, leaning casually on the porch railing. "And here's the fun part. Every word, every invoice, every drone flight you've sent over my property is documented. I've spent my career writing the rules you're now breaking." She revved her engine but didn't drive away. "This isn't over," she hissed. "Good," I said, smiling. "I'm just getting started." When she finally left, I sat in the quiet hum of crickets and night wind. My hands were steady, but my heart thumped with adrenaline. People like Aubrey King thrived on intimidation on neighbors, too timid to fight back. She didn't realize yet that I wasn't one of them. The next morning, I made my move. I emailed the Ridgefield County Commissioner's office, attaching every piece of evidence, invoices, photographs, and a written statement accusing the HOA of unauthorized occupation and fraudulent reimbursement of public road maintenance funds. I copied the county legal department, the transportation division, and just for flavor, the local news tip line of Channel 8 Investigates. Then I waited. It didn't take long. 2 days later, a white county pickup truck pulled onto the road. Out stepped Inspector Harris, the same woman who'd come before, clipboard in hand. This time she wasn't smiling. "Mr. Mitchell," she said, "we received your complaint. I've been asked to perform an official inspection." She spent over an hour taking photos of the unauthorized signage and measuring the newly graveled shoulders. "This road's public right-of-way," she confirmed. "They had no authority to alter or bill for it." "What happens next?" I asked. "The county will issue a cease and desist order to Maple Grove HOA and audit their previous reimbursement requests. If they've taken county money under false pretenses..." She gave a low whistle. "That's a felony, Mr. Mitchell." I couldn't help but grin. I'll pretend to be surprised. That night, the sound of drills and hammers echoed faintly down the road. I drove out to see two men in HOA uniforms hurriedly removing the private road sign under cover of darkness. They didn't notice me watching from my truck headlights off. When they finished, they tossed the sign into the back of their pickup and sped away like kids caught spray painting a wall. The next morning, I found an anonymous note taped to my mailbox. No letterhead this time, just 4 words written in thick marker: "You've made a mistake." I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my coffee. A mistake, maybe for them. Because now the county's lawyers were involved, and I had something even more powerful than anger momentum. Within a week, the county commissioner's office confirmed receipt of my report and announced an internal review of Maple Grove Estate's maintenance funding. And by Friday, Channel 8 ran a short segment, "HOA accused of misusing county funds. Former engineer raises alarm." They blurred my face, but anyone local would have recognized the road. That weekend, Aubrey's black SUV was gone from her driveway. For 2 days, Maple Grove Estates went silent. No drones, no letters, no mowers. Just peace. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Because people like Aubrey King didn't just vanish. They regrouped. They planned. And sure enough, Monday morning, a thick stack of papers landed in my mailbox, certified this time. Notice of legal action, defamation, and interference with HOA operations. She was suing me. I smiled, folded the letter neatly, and set it beside the pile of county records on my desk. It was bold, I'd give her that, but I had something she didn't: the truth and the patience to weaponize it. For now, I let the lawsuit sit untouched. The storm had officially begun, but I wasn't afraid. I'd built bridges that could hold more weight than this. And when it was over, I promised myself one thing: the next sign standing on that road wouldn't say private property. It would say public freedom. The lawsuit was just the opening volley. By the time I finished reading through the HOA's complaint, I was half amused, half impressed. The document accused me of defamation, public harassment, and interference with community operations. It read less like a legal filing and more like a high school diary written in rage. Still, I knew the game. This wasn't about winning in court. It was about intimidation. They wanted to drain my time, my wallet, and my patience until I surrendered. But they'd picked the wrong guy to play procedural chicken with. I'd spent 3 decades designing and reviewing infrastructure proposals. Bureaucracy was my battlefield. I knew every form, every loophole, every way to make paperwork bend back on itself. So, instead of panicking, I started building my own counteroffensive, quietly, methodically. I began by reviewing the HOA's charter and their recorded plat maps, which were public record. Buried in an old appendix from 2009, I found something extraordinary: a maintenance boundary agreement that was supposed to cover only internal subdivision roads, none of which included County Road 214 amperes, the road leading to my property. The language was so clear it could have been engraved in granite. The association shall have no authority or responsibility for any right-of-way or roadway maintained under county jurisdiction. Game over. The next morning, I walked the length of the road with my phone camera rolling. The HOA trucks had returned same orange vests, same smug disregard for property lines. They were spreading fresh gravel near the shoulder, pretending to repair erosion damage. I recorded everything, zooming in on their HOA Maintenance Division logos and the GPS coordinates on my screen. Evidence time-stamped and irrefutable. But the real problem wasn't the workers, it was Aubrey King. That afternoon, she marched straight onto my driveway like she owned the county. Her heels clicked against the gravel, her pink suit crisp and blinding under the Sunday. She didn't bother with greetings. "You've made a mess of things, Mr. Mitchell," she snapped. "My board is furious." "Then maybe your board should read your own bylaws," I said, "or the county code. They make excellent bedtime material." Her lips thinned. "We could have resolved this peacefully." "But you've gone too far, calling the county the news, humiliating our community. Do you have any idea how that looks? Like accountability," I said evenly. Her tone dropped to a hiss. "You'll regret this." I stepped closer, lowering my voice until it was barely above a whisper. "You're standing on county land right now, Miss King. If you want to make another threat, I suggest you step back onto yours." She froze, realizing she was indeed a few feet past her boundary marker. Then, with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes, she turned on her heel and stormed back to her SUV. Gravel sprayed as she peeled away. That night, my phone buzzed with an email notification from the HOA's attorney, a man named Gordon L. Best, Esquire. The message was short and self-important. "Cease and desist any unauthorized surveillance, filming, or recording of HOA personnel. Failure to comply may result in additional civil penalties. I chuckled. Surveillance. Nice try, Gordon. I replied with a single sentence. All recordings were conducted on public property in accordance with state law. See you in court. I didn't get a response, but the harassment only escalated. 2 mornings later, I found a violation notice taped to my mailbox again from the HOA, even though they had zero authority. It accused me of unapproved signage for displaying my house number in the wrong font. They even included a printed photo of my mailbox, as if it were evidence of a crime. That same evening, someone sprayed orange paint across my wooden fence letters that read, "Outsider." I reported it to the sheriff's office. The deputy who came out was young, probably mid-20s, polite but uneasy. "You think this is HOA related?" he asked. I don't think I said. "I know," he sighed. "We get calls from that neighborhood every week. I'll file a report, but without video, there's not much we can do." "Don't worry," I said, tapping my trail camera mounted near the gate. "I've got video." By midnight, I had the footage downloaded, grainy but clear enough. A figure in dark clothing, short and broad-shouldered spray, can in hand, slinking along the fence line. When the porch light flicked on, the person turned just for a moment, and the camera caught her profile. Aubrey King. I almost didn't believe it at first. The HOA president sneaking around like a teenager with a grudge. I replayed the clip 3 times just to be sure. It was her. Same haircut, same posture. I smiled, shaking my head. She'd just written her own downfall. The next day, I emailed the video to her attorney with the subject line, "Unauthorized HOA activity. Evidence attached." No words, no threats, just the file. Within hours, the lawsuit against me was withdrawn, pending further review. But Aubrey wasn't finished. If anything, the withdrawal seemed to enrage her more. The HOA started sending anonymous complaint forms to county zoning ridiculous accusations about improper drainage and unpermitted utilities on my land. Each one forced a county inspector to visit, wasting everyone's time. I started greeting them with coffee and donuts. One of them, an older man named Ray, laughed as he looked over the property. "Jeff, you've got the cleanest yard in the county. They're trying to bury you in paperwork." "Yeah," I said. "Too bad I can swim in paperwork." I began turning every one of their false complaints into official county correspondence, copying the district attorney's office each time. It didn't take long before the tone of those inspections shifted from casual visits to formal investigations. The county hated being manipulated, and Aubrey's constant meddling was now drawing their ire instead of mine. Then came the night everything shifted from petty to dangerous. Around 2 a.m., Scout, the stray shepherd mix I'd adopted a few months earlier, started barking uncontrollably near the front porch. I grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside. The air was still too still. Then I saw it, a metal stake hammered into the edge of my yard with a laminated paper attached. Notice of road closure. Maple Grove HOA Authority. Effective immediately, all vehicle traffic beyond this point is restricted to residents of Maple Grove Estates. I laughed aloud, a deep, incredulous laugh that echoed through the trees. They'd lost all sense of reality. But my laughter faded when I noticed fresh tire tracks curving across the ditch-deep ruts filled with water. Someone had driven through my yard, deliberately tearing up the soil. My heart pounded with a mix of anger and adrenaline. Scout growled beside me, hackles raised. I snapped photos, measured the tracks, and followed them to the road where they merged with the pavement. Then I noticed something else. A motion-activated camera mounted on the HOA signpost angled straight at my driveway. They were watching me now. That was the moment I decided to stop reacting. I was going on offense. The next morning, I walked into the county courthouse and filed a petition for injunctive relief legalese for make them stop harassing me. It cited property interference, harassment, and trespassing by a private entity. I attached photos, video, and a log of every false complaint filed by the HOA. The clerk, a kind older woman named Patty, scanned through the stack eyebrows, rising higher with each page. "Mr. Mitchell," she said, "this is one of the most thorough filings I've ever seen." I smiled. Old habits die hard. Within a week, the county issued a temporary restraining order against the HOA, forbidding any representative, including its president, from setting foot on my property or posting signage within 50 feet of the public road. When the notice was served, Aubrey's SUV idled at the end of the street. She refused to get out. The deputy walked up to her window, handed her the envelope, and gestured for her signature. I watched from my porch as she scribbled something furiously, then threw the pen onto the passenger seat. The deputy returned my copy a few minutes later. "She wasn't happy," he said. I can't imagine she ever is, I replied. That night I poured myself a glass of bourbon and sat on the porch. The air smelled of pine and victory. For the first time in months, the road was quiet, no trucks, no drones, no HOA patrol cars pretending to be official. Just silence. But deep down I knew it wasn't over. Women like Aubrey King didn't accept defeat, they plotted comebacks. She'd regroup, find a new angle, twist some clause in her bylaws into another weapon. And when she did, I'd be ready. Because if she thought she'd taken this as far as it could go, she was wrong. I hadn't even started playing my best card yet. The county knew now that the road wasn't hers. But soon everyone would know, including the state. And once the state got involved, Maple Grove HOA wouldn't just lose the road. They'd lose everything built around it. When you've spent your career designing roads, you learn something about systems, not just asphalt and drainage, but people. Systems crumble not because they're attacked, but because someone finally shines light on the cracks. That's exactly what I was about to do to Aubrey King's little empire. The restraining order had silenced her temporarily, but silence wasn't victory. I knew her type control freaks don't sleep, they scheme. Sure enough, within a week, her HOA vice president, a man named Doug Keller, former insurance salesman with a face like a permanent sunburn, started showing up in her place. He was her mouthpiece now, attending county hearings, emailing the press, pretending Maple Grove Estates was misrepresented. One morning I got a notice from the county clerk. The HOA had filed a counterclaim, arguing that their historic stewardship of the road granted them implied jurisdiction through continuous maintenance. I nearly spat out my coffee laughing. They were invoking prescriptive easement law, a doctrine that applies only when no one challenges the use for 20 years. And I had already challenged it loudly. So I played my next card. I called my old friend Linda Morales, a land use attorney who'd worked with me back in my DOT days. She was blunt, brilliant, and allergic to HOA nonsense. "Jeff, I read your email," she said when she picked up. "And I have to say I've missed watching you dismantle bullies with paperwork." "Then you're in for a show," I replied. "They just claimed they own the road by squatting on it." She laughed a sharp professional chuckle. "Classic HOA arrogance. Send me everything you've got, survey maps, maintenance, invoices, any county memos." I did, and within 48 hours, she filed a formal petition to the Ridgefield County Court to review the HOA's claim. Attached were 50 pages of supporting documents, including a sworn affidavit from the county engineer verifying that County Road 214 amperes had been continuously funded and maintained by public tax dollars since 1982. In other words, the HOA was trying to claim ownership over a government-maintained road. That's not just arrogance, that's fraud. The petition triggered an emergency review hearing. The county judge, Harriet Dawson, was a no-nonsense woman, with a dry wit and a reputation for despising frivolous litigation. The courtroom filled quickly the morning of the hearing. HOA board members on one side, curious residents and reporters on the other. Aubrey wasn't present. Doug sat at the table, red-faced and fidgeting. Linda stood beside me, her blazer crisp, her expression calm. When our case was called, she stepped forward. "Your Honor," she began, "Maple Grove Estates has attempted to assert ownership of a county road by claiming implied maintenance authority. However, the county has continuously recorded tax-funded maintenance on this roadway for 43 consecutive years. We have the records, we have the maps. What we don't have is any legal basis for the HOA's claim." Doug stood to object, muttering something about community tradition. Judge Dawson's eyebrow arched. "Mr. Keller," she said, "community tradition does not override recorded public ownership." The courtroom chuckled. Linda handed the clerk a folder. "We respectfully request a declaratory judgment confirming the road's public status and barring the HOA from future interference." Doug tried one last desperate argument about liability and safety. Judge Dawson leaned forward. "You mean liability from harassing your neighbor? Because according to this restraining order, that seems to be the only safety issue present." By the time she banged her gavel, it was official. The court declared County Road 214 amperes a public right-of-way and ordered the HOA to remove all signage and cease maintenance immediately. We'd won at least the first battle. Outside the courthouse, a few reporters caught up to me. One asked Mr. Mitchell, "What does this ruling mean for the community?" I smiled. "It means freedom. It means no one, not even a homeowners association, can rewrite property lines with arrogance and a paintbrush." The quote made the local news that evening. And that's when things really started heating up. The story spread fast. Retired engineer beats HOA in court. The online comments were a mix of applause and fury. Some HOA loyalists accused me of ruining the neighborhood's reputation, while others, mostly quiet residents, emailed me privately to say thank you. They'd been fined, bullied, or intimidated by Aubrey's regime for years, but never dared to push back. Now someone had. But Aubrey wasn't done. When control is your oxygen losing, it feels like suffocation. She found a new tactic: fear. 2 days after the court ruling, a community alert email went out to all residents of Maple Grove Estates, written by acting HOA President Doug Keller, but clearly orchestrated by Aubrey. Subject: you argent, dangerous trespasser on community roads residents. Please be advised that an individual named Jeffrey Mitchell continues to occupy and alter property adjacent to Maple Grove Estates. This individual has a history of aggression and has been involved in multiple disputes with county officials. For your safety, avoid contact and report any suspicious activity immediately. They'd turned me into a villain in my own story. My phone blew up with messages from friends inside the HOA boundaries. "Jeff, this is crazy," one texted. "They're making you sound like a criminal." That night I took a slow walk down the road, letting the quiet wash over me. The moon hung low, glinting off the fresh patch of asphalt I'd repaired myself last month. Somewhere across the ridge, a dog barked, and I thought about the irony. The same people accusing me of danger were the ones trespassing on public land for years. By morning, Linda called. "We can sue them for defamation if you want," she said. I hesitated. "Not yet. Let them talk. Every word they publish is another rope around their necks." Instead, I filed something subtler, a public records request for HOA financial statements under the state's transparency law. Since they'd received public reimbursement funds, their finances were technically open to inspection. And when those records came back, they were even messier than I expected. Over 10 years, Maple Grove HOA had billed the county nearly $320,000 for road maintenance, none of it authorized. The payments had been approved under a vague beautification program Aubrey had personally signed for. It wasn't just unethical, it was criminal misuse of public funds. I forwarded the entire packet to the Ridgefield County Auditor and the District Attorney's Office with a short note. "Please review attached documents regarding potential misappropriation of county funds by Maple Grove HOA. Evidence includes signed authorizations by HOA President Aubrey King." I didn't need to wait long for a reply. The DA's investigator called within days. His tone was cautious but intrigued. "Mr. Mitchell, we've been looking into a few irregularities in county reimbursements. You may have just handed us the missing puzzle piece." He asked for permission to use my evidence in an ongoing investigation. I gave it gladly. And just like that, the fight I started in my driveway had become a criminal inquiry. A week later, unmarked vehicles appeared near Maple Grove's clubhouse. 2 county investigators spent the morning photographing files and downloading data from HOA computers. Residents whispered, speculated, gawked from behind curtains. By dusk, the air around the neighborhood felt different, like a storm had passed, but thunder still lingered in the distance. For me, it was vindication. For Aubrey King, it was only the beginning of her downfall. That evening, I sat on my porch with a beer in hand, watching the sun set over the road she once claimed. The asphalt glowed gold under the fading light. Scout lay at my feet, tail wagging lazily. I thought about how simple it could have been: neighbors minding their own business, roads shared, peace kept. But some people mistake power for purpose, and when you challenge that illusion, they break. My phone buzzed. A new email from Ridgefield County DA Office, subject: ongoing investigation, Maple Grove HOA. "Mr. Mitchell, thank you for your cooperation. We will keep you informed of developments. Please do not engage further with HOA representatives." I leaned back in my chair, a long, slow exhale leaving my chest. The cracks were showing now in the asphalt, in the lies, and in Aubrey King's once perfect image. And I knew exactly where to press next. Because for all her arrogance, she'd forgotten one crucial truth: roads always lead somewhere, and this one was leading straight to her doorstep. The morning after the investigators raided the Maple Grove HOA office, you could feel the tension radiating from across the ridge like static before a thunderstorm. Trucks that used to rumble confidently down County Road 214 amperes were gone. The usual hum of lawnmowers and hedge trimmers had gone silent. Even the HOA's weekly newsletter, normally a digital megaphone for self-congratulation, was strangely absent from my inbox. For the first time since I'd moved here, Maple Grove felt nervous. And that's how I knew something big was coming. Around noon, I was out by the ditch line repairing a drainage grate when a silver Lexus rolled to a stop at the edge of my property. The door opened, and there she was, Aubrey King, the self-proclaimed empress of Maple Grove. She was dressed like she'd just stepped out of a real estate magazine, shoot white blouse, gold earrings, but no pink blazer this time. She traded color for control. I straightened up and leaned on my shovel. Didn't the restraining order cover 50 feet from the road, Miss King? She gave me that tight, artificial smile, the kind that looks more like a grimace. I'm not trespassing. I'm on the easement, she said, arms crossed. I came to talk. I prefer email, I said. This isn't about the road anymore, she snapped. You've started something you don't understand. The county's investigating me, my board, my entire association. You've destroyed our reputation. I wiped the dirt from my gloves. No, Aubrey. You destroyed it the moment you turned a neighborhood into your kingdom. Her eyes flashed. You think people are on your side. They aren't. They're scared of you. They say you're vindictive, obsessed, some kind of bitter old man who can't let go. Funny, I said I could say the same thing about you minus the old man part. For a moment she just stared at me, eyes cold, posture trembling with suppressed rage. Then she spat the words, "You'll regret this." "Already did," I said softly. "The day you called the cops on me for moving in." She turned sharply, storming back to her car, but before she slammed the door, she looked back and said something. I didn't catch something that sounded like, "It's not over." She was right. It wasn't. That evening, my phone buzzed with a text from Linda Morales, my attorney. "Jeff, you should see this. Check your email." Now. I opened it. Attached was a PDF of a press release issued by the Ridgefield County District Attorney's Office. My pulse quickened as I read. An investigation into Maple Grove Estates Homeowners Association has revealed potential misappropriation of public funds, falsified maintenance invoices, and misuse of grant money totaling approximately $312,000 over the past decade. HOA President Aubrey King and Treasurer Douglas Keller have been named in the inquiry. There, it was black and white justice. Linda called 5 minutes later. "Jeff, the DA's office just confirmed they're opening a criminal probe. They'll likely subpoena HOA financial records within the week." I exhaled slowly, watching the twilight settle over the trees. "So, it's official." "It's official," she said, "and I'd suggest staying alert. People under investigation get unpredictable." She wasn't exaggerating. The next 48 hours were chaos. My phone buzzed nonstop with messages from reporters wanting comments, neighbors from inside Maple Grove asking what to do, and most surprisingly, anonymous emails from former HOA members forwarding internal messages Aubrey had sent. One subject line stood out, "Urgent Damage Control Plan." I opened it. The email was a desperate plea to the remaining board members. "We must unify the narrative. Mitchell's claims have twisted perception. Emphasize that he's a disgruntled outsider, and that any roadwork payments were approved by the county. Do not discuss reimbursements publicly." It was like watching a ship's captain tell her crew to plug bullet holes with duct tape while the hull was already underwater. By the end of the week, 2 county auditors showed up at the Maple Grove clubhouse with clipboards and stern expressions. I didn't need to be there to know what they found: years of sloppy bookkeeping, unauthorized transfers, and payments to consultants who didn't exist. Word spread quickly. Aubrey's husband had already resigned from the county zoning committee, and Doug Keller had gone radio silent. But even with her empire crumbling, Aubrey still had one weapon left: the narrative. The following Monday, local news ran a segment titled "HOA President Denise Wrongdoing Blames Rogue Resident for False Accusations." There she was on camera, standing in front of her manicured lawn voice, trembling just enough to sound victimized. "This entire situation has been fabricated by a man seeking attention," she said. "We've served our community faithfully. Any errors were administrative, not criminal." I watched the clip from my couch, Scout's head resting on my knee. The reporter mentioned my name twice, but I didn't bother responding. I didn't need to. Truth has gravity, and it was already pulling her down. Still, I couldn't help feeling the familiar sting of exhaustion. Even when your right fighting power is tiring. The letters, the threats, the cameras, it all takes something out of you. That night I sat on the porch with the lights off, listening to the wind move through the pines. For the first time in weeks, the road was empty. No HOA trucks, no harassment, just quiet. The peace didn't last. At 3 a.m., Scout barked so violently I thought someone was breaking in. I grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside. The night air smelled like smoke. Not heavy, but acrid sharp. I followed the scent toward the roadside and froze. Someone had set fire to my mailbox. The wooden post was half-charred embers glowing faintly at the base. I doused it with a bucket of water, cursing under my breath. Whoever did it hadn't just vandalized property, they wanted a message burned into my yard. I called the sheriff's office. Deputy Howard, the same one who'd served Aubrey her restraining order, arrived within 20 minutes. He crouched beside the smoking remains. "You got cameras still, always," I said, leading him to my porch monitor. We scrolled through footage until the timestamp flashed 2:47 a.m. There she was again, Aubrey King wearing dark clothes, face half-lit by the reflection of her own phone flashlight. She bent down, lighter in hand, then sprinted back to her car when the flame caught. Howard sighed. "Jesus. She's lost it." He radioed it in, then turned to me. "You want to press charges?" I nodded. "Absolutely." By sunrise, Aubrey King had officially crossed from civil arrogance into criminal stupidity. The DA's office didn't waste time. Combined with the ongoing fraud investigation, the arson attempt sealed her fate. Within days, she was charged with destruction of property harassment and obstruction of a county investigation. Doug Keller followed soon after for falsifying invoices. The news broke fast and loud. Channel 8 ran another segment this time with the headline, "HOA President Charged After Targeting Neighbor Who Exposed Fraud." The footage showed deputies walking Aubrey from her home to a waiting cruiser. She didn't wear her trademark sunglasses this time. She looked smaller, deflated, defeated, the crown finally slipping. I didn't cheer. I didn't gloat. I just watched in silence as the woman who'd made my life hell was escorted down the same road she once claimed to own. A week later, the county commissioner's office held a town meeting at the community center to discuss the future of Maple Grove Estates. The room was packed, residents, journalists, even a few county lawyers. Linda sat beside me, arms crossed, watching as interim officials took the stage. The announcement came quickly. Effective immediately, the Maple Grove Homeowners Association has been placed under administrative receivership. All operations will be suspended, pending completion of a financial audit. County control of the public road will remain permanent. Applause erupted from the audience, hesitant at first, then growing louder. Some people cheered, others cried. A few hung their heads in quiet shame. I just sat there, letting the noise wash over me. When it finally died down, one of the new board members approached me, a young guy named Ethan Ross, probably mid-30s, nervous but determined. "Mr. Mitchell," he said, extending his hand, "I wanted to thank you. A lot of us were too scared to speak up. You gave people courage." I shook his hand. "Just remember one thing, Ethan. You're not managing property. You're managing trust. Don't make the same mistake your predecessors did." He nodded solemnly. "We won't." That night, as I walked home under the streetlights, I glanced at the signpost where the Privet Road sign had once stood. The county had replaced it with a new one. Simple, reflective, official. County Road 214 amperes. Public access. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the faint echo of something like closure. Scout trotted ahead, tail wagging nose in the cool air. I paused, halfway up the driveway, turned back, and whispered to the darkness, "It's over." But deep down, I knew it wasn't just the end of a feud. It was the end of an illusion, the idea that power could exist without consequence. Aubrey had ruled by fear. Now she'd live by the same rules she broke. The queen had finally lost her crown. For weeks after Aubrey's arrest, the road lay strangely quiet, too quiet. It wasn't just the absence of HOA trucks or lawn care crews. It was the sound of a kingdom without its queen. The neighbors, once proud of their manicured cul-de-sacs, now drove slower when they passed my property, eyes darting like they expected guilt to jump out of the ditch and bite them. The white fences looked less like status and more like surrender. Then one morning, a county official knocked on my door. He was a middle-aged man in a blue work shirt embroidered with Ridgefield County Infrastructure Division. His name tag read, Paul Ortega. "Mr. Mitchell," he said, holding a clipboard. "We're finalizing the transition plan for County Road 214 amperes. I was told you used to work with DOT. 30 years, I replied. Mostly rural infrastructure. Why? He smiled. Because frankly, sir, we could use your help. You know this stretch better than anyone, and we've got a limited crew for the first maintenance phase. That was the first time in months someone had spoken to me without suspicion or accusation. I nodded. Count me in. For the next several days, I found myself back in familiar territory, surveying potholes, testing soil compaction, measuring drainage angles. Paul and his crew respected me right away. They didn't care about HOA politics. They just wanted the job done right. Together we patched the broken shoulder and regraded the ditches where Aubrey's crews had overdug the soil. When the work wrapped, Paul handed me a form to sign. Officially, he said, "You're now listed as a volunteer coordinator under the County Road Stewardship Program." I signed it without hesitation. For the first time since moving here, I wasn't just defending my property, I was shaping it. 2 days later, I went into town to pick up supplies. When I returned, a small white SUV was parked at the end of the road, engine idling. I slowed as I approached. The driver rolled down the window, a woman maybe in her 40s, hair tied back, nervous smile. "Mr. Mitchell?" she asked. "That depends who's asking." "I'm Clara Benson, the interim HOA secretary. I just wanted to say, we're sorry." I blinked. "Sorry, yes, for how things went. Many of us didn't know what Aubrey and Doug were doing. We trusted them." Her voice trembled. "People are angry, embarrassed. We lost friends over this." I studied her face. She wasn't lying. Guilt had a certain way of softening people. "Apology accepted," I said. "Just make sure it never happens again." She nodded quickly. "We're voting to dissolve the HOA next month. The county says it's our right." A smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. Good choice. That evening, the sunset glowed like molten gold across the asphalt. I stood by the road watching the shadows of pine trees stretch long and thin. The new county sign gleamed faintly, "Public Access," maintained by Ridgefield County. For the first time, those words looked like freedom. But peace, as I'd learned, rarely lasts long around people who crave control. The next week, I got an email from a law firm in the city, Braden and Knox, LLC. The subject line made my stomach tighten: "Notice of Property Boundary Review." It turned out that one of Aubrey's old allies, a real estate investor named Tom Landers, had purchased her foreclosed home. He wasn't interested in redemption, he wanted revenge by proxy. His email was polite but sharp. "Mr. Mitchell, as the new property owner of 187 Maple Ridge Drive, I am initiating a private boundary reassessment of the parcel adjacent to yours. I believe the county survey markers may be misplaced by approximately 6 feet. Until the review concludes, please refrain from modifying or accessing the easement area." I could practically hear the smirk behind those words. It was a new villain wearing an old mask. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I went straight to the county land office. The clerk, a woman named Sharon, pulled up the digital overlay of our properties. She laughed softly. 6 feet, he's fishing. That boundary's been certified 3 times, including after your case. He's wasting his money." I nodded. "Still send me a certified copy just in case." The next day, I mailed Landers a single sheet, the official county map stamped and signed. On the back, I wrote in pen, "Boundaries don't move just because someone with money wishes they did." No threats, no anger, just fact. He didn't respond, at least not directly. But 2 days later, a construction crew arrived, claiming they were hired by a private client to improve the road frontage. I stepped outside, arms crossed. "You boys got a permit?" The foreman hesitated, glancing at his clipboard. "It's a private job, sir. We're just following orders." "This is county property," I said, pointing to the blue marker post. "You don't have a permit, you're trespassing. Want me to call the sheriff, or should we skip to the fine?" They left within minutes. By the following week, Landers' attorney sent another email, this one dripping with frustration. "Your hostility has been noted. My client reserves the right to pursue damages for interference with lawful property development." I laughed. Lawful development, that was HOA code for we lost control and we hate it. Still, I wasn't taking chances. I gathered every document, every photograph, every official ruling since this war began, and I built what I called my freedom file. It was a binder 4 inches thick, labeled in bold black marker, "Maple Grove HOA, The Reckoning." Inside were maps, inspection reports, emails, even screenshots of Aubrey's fraudulent invoices. I sent a digital copy to Linda and another to the county records office. If anything happens to me, I told them, this file speaks for itself. One evening, Paul from the county crew stopped by. "You heard the news?" he asked. "What now? The DA's office is closing the case." Aubrey took a plea deal. Probation, community service, restitution. Keller too. They're both banned from serving on any HOA or nonprofit board in the state. I let out a long, slow breath. Good. She's working at the local hardware store, by the way, Paul added. Saw her stocking paint cans last week. The irony hit hard. The woman who once fined people for painting fences without permission was now selling buckets of color she no longer controlled. That night I sat on my porch again, bourbon in hand, Scout curled at my feet. The moonlight spilled over the road, clean, repaired, honest. A few cars passed, their headlights gliding peacefully across the pavement. No one stopped. No one shouted. No one claimed ownership. That's when the idea struck me. I went inside, opened my laptop, and drafted a proposal to the county. I called it the Ridgefield Community Access Program, a volunteer initiative to maintain and beautify neglected public roads using local residents, not HOAs. It was part infrastructure, part civic rebellion. Within a week, I had a meeting scheduled, and when I presented the idea, they loved it. "You're talking about a countywide stewardship model?" the commissioner asked. "Exactly," I said. "Give people responsibility instead of control. Roads belong to everyone, not just those with the loudest boards or the deepest pockets." By the end of the session, they approved a pilot program starting right here on County Road, 214 amperes. When the announcement went live online, residents from surrounding neighborhoods began emailing asking how to join. One message stood out: "Mr. Mitchell, I live 2 towns over. Our HOA's starting to overreach too. Thanks for proving it's possible to fight back and win." I read that one twice, maybe 3 times. On the day the new road sign went up, Paul let me bolt it in myself. It wasn't big or fancy, but it meant everything: County Road, 214 amperes public access, maintained by Ridgefield community volunteers. Neighbors stopped to watch. Clara Benson brought lemonade for the crew. Kids rode their bikes past calling out, "Thanks, Mr. Mitchell." I looked down the stretch of asphalt that had once sparked lawsuits, threats, and even arson, and I couldn't help smiling. The road was quiet again, but not empty. It belonged to everyone now, the way it always should have. I turned to Paul and said, "You know, funny thing about roads, people think they connect houses, but really they connect stories." He nodded. "And this one, Jeff, might be the best damn story this county's had in years." Maybe he was right. Because somewhere between the lawsuits and the lies, I hadn't just reclaimed a strip of asphalt. I'd reclaimed my peace. And maybe in some strange way, everyone else's too. It's strange how quickly power rots once sunlight hits it. One day people bow their heads to it. The next they pretend they never believed in it. That's exactly what happened to Maple Grove Estates after the county took control of the road. The empire that Aubrey King built on fear and fake authority crumbled like wet plaster, and for the first time the people who once whispered behind their fences were starting to speak. I started seeing it everywhere. The same residents who used to glare at me when I drove past were now waving, some even stopping their cars just to chat. One woman, Mrs. Langford, an older widow who used to be one of Aubrey's most loyal allies, pulled over one afternoon while I was painting new reflective lines along the shoulder with the volunteer crew. "Mr. Mitchell," she said, stepping out, clutching a paper bag from the grocery store. "I owe you an apology." I paused mid-stroke. "For what, ma'am?" "For believing her. Aubrey. She told us you were a troublemaker, that you wanted to tear this place apart. I was so afraid of getting fined I stopped talking to my neighbors. That's not living." Her eyes welled up. "You gave us our community back." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. "You don't owe me thanks, Mrs. Langford. You owe it to yourself for realizing you deserved better." After that, she started baking cookies for every volunteer crew meeting. By the 3rd week, half the neighborhood was showing up. Some brought snacks, some brought tools, and some just stood around telling stories about how crazy the old HOA had gotten. One man recalled being fined $75 for leaving his trash bin out 15 minutes too long. Another said Aubrey once made him repaint his entire garage door because the shade of beige was too warm. We laughed, but underneath the laughter was a shared shame. Shame that we'd let one person's obsession with control take over so many lives. Meanwhile, the county audit finished its report. The results were worse than even I'd guessed. Not only had Aubrey and Doug siphoned off public reimbursements, but they'd also overcharged residents, thousands in special assessments that were never filed properly. The DA's office announced that restitution would come from the sale of HOA-owned assets, their office building maintenance equipment, even the decorative sign at the subdivision's entrance. When I read that part, I couldn't help but smile. That massive stone sign, "Welcome to Maple Grove Estates," a proud HOA community, had always felt like a monument to arrogance. 2 weeks later, I drove by and watched as a county crew lifted it with a backhoe and dropped it into a dumpster. Dust clouded the air like an exorcism. But not everyone was happy about the clean slate. Some of the die-hard loyalists still clung to the old illusion. A handful of them, mostly ex-board members and retirees with too much free time, began meeting at the closed-down clubhouse. They called themselves the Restoration Committee. One afternoon, I found a flyer taped to my mailbox. Maple Grove Restoration Meeting. Join your fellow homeowners in taking back our community's independence. At the bottom it read, "Special guest speaker, Tom Landers." I tore it off, folded it once, and slipped it into my back pocket. Later that week, I showed the flyer to Linda Morales. She skimmed it, frowning. "Landers again. You'd think after losing his fake boundary claim he'd have learned. Some people can't live without control," I said. "It's oxygen to them. She leaned back in her chair. You want my advice? Don't go. Let them implode. The county's got their number now. But I couldn't resist. I didn't go to fight, I went to watch. The meeting took place in the clubhouse's dusty event hall, still stripped of its HOA signage. About 20 people showed up, sitting in folding chairs under flickering fluorescent lights. Landers stood at the front, pacing like a politician in exile. This community has lost its voice, he shouted. The county took what was ours. They humiliated us, and we just let them. A few murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Then he pointed toward the back right at me. And there's the man who started it all. Heads turned. The room went silent. I stood slowly. You're damn right, I started it, I said. Because what you had wasn't a community, it was a dictatorship with better landscaping. Gasps. Someone muttered. He's right, Landers sneered. You think you're some kind of hero, you destroyed property values. You made us a laughingstock. I stepped forward, voice calm. No, Tom. Greed destroyed this place. Lying destroyed it. You and Aubrey treated homeowners like subjects. I just reminded them they were citizens. For a moment nobody spoke. Then Mrs. Langford, bless her brave heart, stood up and said, He's right. We were scared of our own neighbors. That's not worth any property value. One by one, people started nodding. Landers' face turned the color of an undercooked steak. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard a ceiling tile fell loose. The restoration committee never met again. But that night, as I walked home under the pale streetlight, I saw something glinting on my front lawn, a metal stake with a small sign attached. It read, Traitor. Old habits die hard. I pulled it up, tossed it in the trash, and went to bed without saying a word. You don't fight shadows by shouting back. You fight them by keeping the lights on. A few days later, the county held a ceremony to unveil the new community stewardship program, the one I'd proposed. They'd even printed brochures with a photo of County Road 214 amperes on the cover. Paul Ortega introduced me on stage. Folks, if you've ever wondered what one person can do against a broken system, look no further than Jeffrey Mitchell, he said. Because of him, our county is launching a volunteer initiative that replaces fear with collaboration. Roads maintained by people, not politics. The applause caught me off guard. I wasn't used to being celebrated. For months I'd been the villain in someone else's story. Now I was the protagonist again. When it was my turn to speak, I kept it simple. All I ever wanted was to drive home in peace, I said. But peace doesn't just happen. You have to pave it, maintain it, and sometimes defend it. That line got printed in the Ridgefield Gazette the next day. After the ceremony, Clara Benson and a few others came up to me with an idea. We're thinking of planting trees along the road, she said. Something beautiful to remind us that it's ours now, all of ours. I helped them plan it. Within a month, saplings lined both sides of the asphalt maples, oaks, and cherry trees. Every time I drove past, I thought about how irony has a sense of humor. The HOA that once called itself Maple Grove had died, but the real maples, the living kind, were thriving. Life settled into something that almost felt normal again. I'd wake up, feed Scout check emails, and walk the road with a cup of coffee in hand. Sometimes I'd pass Paul's crew patching a culvert or Mrs. Langford watering her new flower bed. The sound of kids' laughter had returned, mingling with the distant hum of cicadas. Then one morning, a letter arrived in my mailbox, official county seal, addressed to me personally. Inside was a single sentence, Mr. Mitchell, the Ridgefield County Council would like to formally recognize your service to the community at next month's Civic Awards ceremony. I laughed out loud. Scout wagged his tail like he understood. Can you believe that, boy? I said. They're giving the troublemaker an award. The ceremony was modest, folding chairs under a white canopy, a few speeches, some coffee and cake. But when they handed me that plaque engraved with for courage and civic stewardship, I felt something loosen in my chest that had been tight for too long. Afterward, I sat on the curb outside the hall, the plaque resting beside me. The wind was warm, the sky clear. Paul walked over, clapped me on the shoulder, and said, You did it, Jeff. You didn't just win, you changed the map. Maybe I did. Or maybe I just reminded people that maps aren't made by rulers. They're drawn by those willing to stand their ground. That night, I drove home slowly, along the same stretch of asphalt where it had all begun. The moon cast silver across the new road paint. The trees we'd planted swayed gently in the breeze, their leaves whispering like an old friend saying, Thank you. I parked in the driveway, stepped out, and looked back at the road. No signs, no barriers, no boundaries. Just connection. For the first time in a long time, it truly felt like home. 6 months passed. The maple trees I'd planted with Clara and Paul were beginning to bud young defiant bursts of green pushing through late spring light. The air smelled cleaner, lighter. Ridgefield County Road, 214 amperes, had gone from a battleground to a lifeline, a place where kids, bike joggers, waved, and neighbors once divided by fear now stopped to talk again. The HOA was gone for good. Officially dissolved. The county had closed its final audit and distributed restitution checks to the residents who'd been fined illegally. Most people tore up those checks right there in the clerk's office, not out of anger but relief. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about moving forward. But moving forward is a strange thing. You fight for it so long that when peace finally comes, you almost don't know what to do with it. I still woke early out of habit. Scout, older now, slower on the steps, followed me down the driveway every morning. We'd stand by the roadside as the sun lifted over the horizon, the asphalt glinting like dark glass. That road had seen more history than any stretch of pavement deserved. Lies, lawsuits, fire redemption, and now it just existed. Quiet, honest. Then one morning I received an envelope from the Ridgefield County Council, heavy paper gold seal. Inside was an invitation. Dear Mr. Mitchell, the County Council invites you to deliver the keynote address at this year's Civic Renewal Conference. Your efforts to defend citizen rights and community integrity have inspired reforms beyond Ridgefield. The state legislature is reviewing new guidelines on HOA accountability, informally called the Mitchell Act. I stared at the words for a long time. My name on a law, not something I ever planned. I wasn't a politician or an activist. I was just a man who wanted peace and asphalt that stayed where it belonged. When the day of the conference came, the hall was filled. County officials, environmental advocates, engineers, and regular homeowners tired of HOA tyranny. Linda Morales sat in the front row, smiling like a proud older sister. Paul was beside her, notebook in hand. The moderator introduced me as the man who turned a driveway dispute into statewide reform. The applause that followed felt surreal. I took the podium, cleared my throat, and began. When I first moved to Ridgefield, I said I thought I was buying a quiet life. Just a house, a few acres, and a stretch of road that connected me to everything I loved. But then someone told me I didn't belong, that my driveway wasn't mine, that peace had to be approved, regulated, signed in triplicate. A few chuckles rippled through the audience. What I learned, I continued, is that power, no matter how small, attracts arrogance. Give someone a clipboard and a title, and they'll start believing they own the ground you walk on. But the truth is simpler. No one owns peace. You build it, you defend it, you share it. I paused, looking at their faces, some nodding, some writing, all listening. I didn't set out to fight the HOA. I just refused to bow to people who thought rules mattered more than reason. And if this whole mess taught me anything, it's that silence doesn't keep peace, it only feeds the bully. I could see Linda's eyes glisten slightly. The road I fought for, County Road, 214 amperes, doesn't belong to me. It belongs to every kid who pedals down it without fear, every old couple who takes evening walks again, every neighbor who finally waves without wondering if they'll get fined for the color of their mailbox. It belongs to the idea that a community isn't a contract, it's a promise. The hall went quiet. Even the air felt heavier. Then the applause came, not loud or chaotic, but steady, heartfelt. I felt something loosen deep inside me, a knot I'd carried since the day Aubrey King called the cops on me for moving into my own house. Afterward, people crowded around to shake my hand, share their stories. A man from North Carolina told me his HOA banned backyard gardens. He'd printed my case and sent it to his state senator. A retired woman from Arizona said her community now held open votes for every major decision. We called it the Ridgefield Rule, she laughed. Linda leaned over as we left. You realize you've become the patron saint of anti-HOA homeowners, right? I grinned. Not the sainthood I expected, but I'll take it. We drove home together, windows down the wind, carrying that smell of new spring grass, asphalt, and possibility. When we reached my house, she got out, looked at the road, and said, "You know, Jeff, sometimes justice doesn't roar. Sometimes it just hums quietly under the tires." I liked that. That night I sat on the porch, Scout dozing at my feet, a fresh notebook open beside me. The stars shimmered like scattered headlights from some eternal highway, and I started writing not reports or petitions but reflections. A record of everything that happened, not just for me, but for anyone who might one day need to fight their own Aubrey King. I called it the road principle. It began simply, a road doesn't belong to whoever builds the signs. It belongs to whoever travels it with respect. Over the next few weeks, the notebook filled. Stories of neighbors rebuilding fences together, of Clara planting flowers around the new community mailbox of Paul's volunteers, expanding the stewardship program to 3 more counties. Then, one afternoon, Clara stopped by with a box of donuts and a news clipping. The headline read, "State passes Mitchell Act, new HOA oversight, bill signed into law." I laughed. "Well, that escalated quickly." She grinned. "They say you started a movement." "I just started a conversation," I said. The movement was already waiting to happen. Later that day, I took a walk down 214 amperes. The maples had grown taller, the bark dark and firm roots gripping the soil like they belonged. A few new families had moved in nearby, young couples, kids with bright helmets whizzing down the road. They didn't know the full story, and that was fine. They didn't need to. As I passed the bend near the old HOA clubhouse, now converted into a public library annex, I noticed something new. A small bronze plaque set into the roadside stone wall. It read, "In honor of Jeffrey Mitchell, who reminded us that roads belong to everyone." I stood there for a long time, not quite believing it. A woman walking her dog stopped beside me. "Beautiful, isn't it?" she said. "I heard you're the one who fought for all this." I shrugged. "I just fixed a road." She smiled. "Maybe, but you also fixed us." When she left, I knelt down, ran my fingers along the bronze letters and whispered, "We all did." That evening, I invited the crew, Paul, Clara, Linda, even Mrs. Langford, for a barbecue. We ate under the setting sun music, playing low laughter, echoing where once there had been tension and silence. It felt like closure. As the stars came out, Paul raised a glass. "To Jeffrey Mitchell, the man who took back the road and gave it to the people." Everyone cheered. I just lifted my beer and said, "To every person who stopped being afraid of their own neighborhood." When the night wound down, I sat alone on the bench I'd built years ago, facing the now peaceful road. Scout lay at my side, tail thumping gently. Fireflies blinked over the grass. The air was still, and I realized something. This whole fight, every letter, every court date, every insult, every victory, had never really been about asphalt or boundaries. It was about dignity, about the right to live without fear of small tyrants in big houses, about proving that ordinary people can still stand up and say no, and that sometimes saying no is how you protect the quiet things worth keeping. The road stretched ahead, silver in the moonlight, not mine, not theirs, but ours. And for the first time since I'd moved here, I felt peace, real and lasting, the kind no HOA could ever regulate. Every neighborhood, every community has its own Aubrey King, someone who mistakes control for leadership, fear for order. But if this story teaches anything, it's that power only survives when good people stay silent. Courage doesn't always roar in courtrooms. Sometimes it just means standing your ground and saying, "This is wrong." Jeffrey Mitchell's fight wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming the simple right to breathe freely in the place you call home. His victory reminds us that laws matter only when enforced by conscience, and that no road, no matter how cracked, is ever beyond repair if enough hands are willing to rebuild it together. So wherever you're watching from, tell me, have you ever stood up to unfair power? Drop your story in the comments, and if you believe every voice deserves to be heard, hit that subscribe button. Because in this channel, every road leads to one truth: we protect what we love, or we lose it.